You know, for pretty much our entire digital lives, we've been clicking, tapping, and swiping our way through everything. We were the ones in the driver's seat. But something's changing. Now, we're talking to our devices. We're not just giving commands anymore, we're having actual conversations. So what's really going on with that shift?
And that brings up a really fascinating question. You've got your chatbots, your voice assistants, all these new conversational interfaces, or CUIs. Are they just, a new coat of paint on the same old graphical user interfaces, the GUIs we've been using for years? Or are we looking at a completely different beast altogether?
To figure that out, we've got to look under the hood of the graphical interfaces we use every single day. And it turns out, it really all boils down to two fundamental ways of thinking about how to build them. And those two big ideas are called imperative and declarative. Really, it all comes down to one simple difference. Are you telling something how to do a task, step by step, or are you just telling it what you want done at the end? Let's break that down. Okay, so first up is the imperative approach. This one is all about the process. A developer has to write out every single explicit instruction. Stuff like, when the user clicks this button, go find that piece of data. Then you need to change the color of this text over here, and finally, make this pop-up appear. It's like a super detailed step-by-step recipe. The perfect analogy for this is giving someone turn-by-turn directions. You're specifying every single action they need to take to get to their destination. You're completely in control of the journey, not just the final endpoint. But then you've got the other side of the coin, the declarative approach. Here, the developer only cares about the end result. They just describe what the screen should look like in a given situation. Like, hey, when the user is logged in, the screen should show a welcome message. They don't write the code for how to make that happen. Some smart framework handles all the messy in-between steps automatically.
So with the declarative approach, it's a lot like just plugging a destination into your GPS. You trust that it's going to figure out the best route, you've just declared where you want to go, and the system handles the how.
Okay, so we've got imperative, which is the how, and declarative, the what. We have our turn-by-turn directions versus our GPS destination. Now we can finally get back to that original puzzle. So when you ask your smart assistant to do something, are you giving it a set of directions or a final destination? Is it imperative or is it declarative? Well, the answer is neither of them. And that's the real twist here. This is the main thing to get. Conversational interfaces are not just some new feature. No, they represent a totally fundamental shift in how we even think about interacting with technology. In fact, a lot of researchers are starting to see these conversational interfaces as a whole new category, a third paradigm of interaction. That's right, a third way. This isn't just a small step up from clicking and swiping. It's a revolution, and it's a revolution built entirely on dialogue. Just think about it like this. A classic GUI, a graphical user interface, is basically a monologue. You, the user, click, drag, type, you're doing all the talking, and the system just reacts. But a CUI, a conversational user interface, is a dialogue. It's a real back and forth, a conversation, all using natural language. So if it's this whole new paradigm that's based on dialogue, how does it actually work? I mean, what's really going on inside the machine when you're talking to it? It really boils down to a three-step dance. First, something called natural language understanding, or NLU, has to figure out what you actually mean, your intent. Then, the dialogue manager, which is kind of like the CUI's brain, decides what to do next. And finally, natural language generation, or NLG, puts together a response that sounds human. So, understand, decide, and then respond. And this is where it gets really interesting, where we kind of come full circle. Because even though the whole interaction is a brand new paradigm, that brain we talked about, the dialogue manager, can actually be built using our old friends, imperative or declarative logic. Let me give you an example. Think about a simple old-school chatbot. It's almost certainly using an imperative approach. Its creators have literally coded a decision tree. If the user says hello, then respond with hi there. It's a very rigid step-by-step script. But a modern system that uses a large language model, that's declarative. The developer doesn't write the script. They just give the model a whole bunch of data and a goal, and the model itself figures out the best response. The how is totally handled by the system. And because this is a whole new way of interacting, designers have to throw out the old rulebook and write a new one. I mean, you can't design a good conversation the same way you design a good button. You have to start thinking about totally different principles, like context awareness, being cooperative, taking turns, and even giving the system a consistent personality.
So, what's the big picture here? What does this all mean? We've pretty much established that having a conversation with your tech isn't just a new way to click a button. It's a fundamentally different model for how we interact.
The big takeaway is this. We're moving from a world where we just give commands to a world where we have collaborative dialogues with our technology. This is way more than just an update. It's a whole new chapter in our relationship with computers.
And all this leaves us with a pretty massive question for the future, right? As these systems get smarter and more integrated into every part of our lives, is it possible that conversation will eventually become our primary way of interacting with the digital world? Will we talk more than we tap? That's definitely something to think about.